Hello there and welcome to this video. So today I really just want to talk about my mental health problems. So this could be quite a long video, for which I apologise in advance, but I think it will be an important video to do. So I don't really know where to go with this. I think I'm going to split it into three sections, being my personality disorder, anxiety and depression, because anxiety and depression are a result of my personality disorder. So without further ado, I guess let's get into my mental history. So my personality disorder, I was diagnosed with back in, I want to say October of last year. I was diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder, or as it's known outside of the UK, borderline personality disorder. Now, I was diagnosed with traits of this, which means I haven't got the fully fledged thing, but I have got enough traits to be under the EUPD or BPD umbrella, as it were. The main thing that is involved in this that is affecting me personally is not being able to deal with people who are different to myself, and not understanding how to deal with that and those people. Adapting to other people's personalities and becoming like those people, or taking on personality traits that and trying to fit in and making myself very unhappy in the process, because those traits are just not myself. The key example of this, which actually is a almost perfect example, is I went away for training in March of 2017, and I met my team of, there'll be 5 of us, in a performance space. And actually at that point in my life, I was sexually inexperienced. I had never had a boyfriend, and I'd only really kissed a few people in my life. I didn't say a word to my new team. I let them weirdly create a whole kind of life for me, and they determined that I was probably a bit of a, I suppose, slut is the word that's come to mind, but somebody who sleeps around a lot, is promiscuous, what a great word. And I said nothing but adopted this personality that they gave me, and in actual fact started to live out that life a few months later, without really intending to. But when I was diagnosed in October, it became very clear that that's exactly what I'd done, and it was quite bizarre how perfect an example that was of people either telling you what they think you're like and you becoming that, or you adopting other people around you's characteristics. So with EUPD, or BPD as it's more commonly known, another thing is the ups and downs of your mentality. So whereas most people, their emotions will be like this, there'll be waves, and depending on what happens in your life, good and bad will come in and your emotions will go up and down. With EUPD, it's more like this, and it's much more irregular, and something very small can spark absolute stress and emotional crisis point, which is then when something, lots of negative happens, you hit that depression point because you're already at a kind of lower point, if that makes sense. So I'll talk more about the depression side of things in a minute, but essentially I hit emotional crises points where I can't function. Either I just need to sleep because my brain is shutting down, or I end up lying on the floor crying and screaming. A lot of people with BPD, EUPD end up trying to self-harm because they can't cope. But because I've only got traits of, and I haven't got the full-fledged thing, that's happened once in my life and hasn't happened since, and that was at the worst point of all of this. But it occurs to me, but I have enough support around me with my family and boyfriend that I can kind of get past it, although I have been to hospital once with it because of how bad I was feeling. This is actually not a terrible angle. You've got all the bookshelves, I like it. So now it's later in the day, because this topic I feel like I can't do all at once because it's quite difficult to talk about, but it's now colder, hence the massive oversized jumper, but it's warm. Now I'm going to talk about depression. So as a result of EUPD taking you like this emotionally, you kind of, it's easier to hit the deck in terms of depression. So personality disorders you can't cure because you can't treat a personality with medication. So I'm doing therapy for that. For my depression, which was a result of lots of lots of negative things happening all at once, it took me to the worst crisis point, which lasted longer and resulted in an episode of depression, which I'm now being treated for. I was on 50 milligrams of sertraline, and I've recently, in the last week, gone up to 100 milligrams. I'm very lucky that I have no side effects, but I know lots of people do. So obviously everyone's depression is completely different, and for me, I'm very lucky that I've not suffered any side effects, and that actually the sertraline seems to be working incredibly well for me, and I don't imagine that I'll have to go up to 100 milligrams, to 150, sorry. That being said, it did take me approximately 3 months from the worst point, and when the point where the depression completely took hold, to actually begin medication. So not a huge amount of time, but I must admit I've gone private with to a private psychiatrist. Otherwise I probably realistically may not still even be on medication now. So I was privileged enough to have the funds available to me to be able to go to a psychiatrist, who I've now seen a few times and is fantastic, and I'll talk about that in a future video, I'm sure, but I'm very lucky with that. So actually the depression side of things is mostly gone now, but it was very, very difficult at that portion of my life and lasted probably from around April 2017 through to now, the present day, although it's definitely better. And now we're on to the final portion of this video, which is about my anxiety. So with all of my mental health problems, anxiety has never been the biggest portion. I've suffered from mental health problems, and I've had 3 major bouts of depression from the age of 16 up to my current age of 21. So, and they've all lasted around between kind of a year, well, like all about 6 months to a year. But anxiety really came in when I was about 20. My first real experience of proper anxiety was when I was about 20 years old. I was staying with my friends at Falmouth University. I personally hadn't gone to university, something again I'm sure I'll cover in another video in the future, but they'd asked me if I wanted to go into one of their lectures because they thought I might find it quite interesting. And at that point, working towards that time where I was going to go and get the bus and meet them, the anxiety was building because suddenly I was faced with something that I couldn't deal with and didn't want to deal with my own emotions on, because I wasn't sure if not going to uni was a kind of cop-out option for me, which I definitely don't believe that anymore, but I had some underlying feelings then. So my anxiety kind of came forward, and from that point on really, anytime I'm faced with something that is just too much, my brain kind of shuts down and I go into panic mode, which I considered anxiety, but on reflection and from speaking to a psychiatrist about these things, is in actual fact my personality disorder coming through as an emotional crisis. So this is something I'm going to be looking to deal with and get better at coping with over the course of this YouTube channel. That's what this YouTube channel is about for me. Partially through talking about my experiences with therapy. I'm doing DBT, which is like CBT, but it's more talking therapy, talking about my medication experiences, also my kind of self-medicating experiences with things such as, for example, yoga or meditation, eating well, other things that are known to be useful to some people, and how that works for me. So what I'd really love is for you to share things that work for you, things that don't work for you, and to generate a bit of discussion on this channel, because that's what it's kind of about for me, really, is sharing with people and finding out what works for me, what works for you, all useful stuff. Of course, this is just all my personal experiences with mental health, so if any of this seems to ring true to you, and I haven't gone into huge depth, I'll be honest, because that's kind of personal to me, please, if any of it rings true, please do a bit of research, and more importantly, go and see your doctor. They'll probably, if you're in the UK, refer you to iTalk. iTalk do take a horrendously long time to get back to you. However, from personal experience, they are helpful. Although I've gone down the private route, if I didn't have the funds available to me, iTalk would be the route I'd be following. And there are also plenty of charities. For example, there's a charity I went to called Mind, who again I would be using if I weren't going down the private route. So there is loads available. Please talk to somebody professional, because feeling insane is normal. It really is though. Like, so many people have mental health problems, and there's no reason that you should feel alone. So that is it for today's video. On Thursday I'm going to have a video all about Denmark, which is where I currently am, visiting my uncle, and I will see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye.